Barely know, and that
When I first met Dion Oxford a few years ago, he was the director of the Gateway, the Salvation Army's men's shelter in the heart of Toronto. We spent hours during our interview together, but little did I know that he had been living with a debilitating illness the past couple of years, until the day I received an email. Dion had multiple sclerosis and was updating friends and acquaintances about his journey with the disease and a possible medical procedure that could help rid his body of some of the symptoms. But how was this advocate of those in need dealing with his own needs, the strain on his body and his life due to this illness? These are questions I wanted to ask him, and I desperately wanted to tell his story.
means life was easy.
Still the director of the Gateway Men's Shelter and an advocate for the homeless, we met at his home in Toronto that he shares with his wife and daughter. A lot wearier than the first time we met, Dion told me his struggle began in the summer of 1997.
I was on tour with a group, a music group, and a bus tour. And this one night I became numb, completely numb on one side of my body, and it was it totally freaked me out. And so I started seeing doctors, and after quite a long time, I was diagnosed. It took about 6 months actually for the diagnosis, but right from the very beginning, the doctors said, this sort of smacks of MS. We're just going to need to do a whole pile of tests just to make sure.
The test came back positive, and Dion, who was engaged to be married, had to break the news to his fiancée, Erinn.
And we had a wedding date set for that September, and I was freaking out. So sort of ended up sitting down with my then fiancée Erinn and said, look, you know, I likely will end up in a wheelchair, so this is your chance. you could walk, you know.
But for Erinn, that wasn't an option.
And why did you decide to hang in there?
I loved him. It was worth it.
Vancouver connects.
Like many, Dion and Erinn didn't know much about this disease that would now be a part of their lives forever. But according to the MS Society of Canada's website, this country has one of the highest rates of multiple sclerosis in the world. While it mostly hits young adults from 15 to 40, children are diagnosed with the disease all the time. Statistics also show that every day, 3 more people in Canada are diagnosed with MS. But what is this disease exactly? Dr. Ian Rodger, Vice President of Research at St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton, explains.
Well, MS is a neurological disease. That basically means it's a disease that affects nerves. And the nerves that are most effective are the nerves which are part of the brain, part of what we call the central nervous system. And progressively, as you develop the disease, these nerves are attacked, and they tend to lose their function. And therefore, as a consequence, you lose a variety of function, like vision, like hearing, and the capacity to move your limbs.
For Dion, that's exactly what started to happen to him shortly after his diagnosis.
From the time I was diagnosed, my 2 hands have been numb. So from my elbows down, I've lost the sensation in my hands. Most people don't ever know that about me. Lately, it's also gone into my feet. So my hands and feet are constantly numb. And I also experience what's called the MS hug, or the girdle. It's called the girdle effect, which feels like I'm wearing a girdle around my stomach. And that's drawn to varying degrees of tightness depending on how healthy I'm feeling. So those are the 3 constants. And then the relapses, anything can happen. Like, so again, your legs could go out. The vision ones are for me, the scariest. I haven't gone blind, but my eyes have gone dim, and when my heart rate goes up, my eyes go dimmer, and those weeks are freaky.
So last year, when he heard about a possible medical breakthrough by Italian doctor Paolo Zamboni, he says he knew instantly this was it. This was what MS patients had been waiting for.
I'm like this 8-year-old boy waiting for Christmas Day.
What Dion and many other MS patients are so excited about is a new theory by Dr. Zamboni suggesting MS is not an autoimmune disease, as previously thought, but a vascular one. In conducting ultrasounds, the doctor found that in 90% of those he studied who had MS, the veins draining blood from the brain were blocked, and in those without MS, they were not. By doing a simple operation dubbed the liberation procedure, Dr. Zamboni reported many of his patients' MS symptoms disappeared, concluding that MS is caused by chronic cerebral spinal venous insufficiency, CCSVI. Now, a number of doctors around the world have started checking their MS patients for CCSVI, and many are conducting the liberation procedure on MS patients of their own. Canadian doctors have not yet received the green light to do the operation in this country, stating a need for more research into Dr. Zamboni's findings. So Dion, like many others, have been forced, he says, to go out of the country to have this procedure done.
I've seen hundreds now of people online who have had this liberation procedure who were lame and now they can walk.
He's not that far
And so I can't understand any longer. It is very frustrating.
Dr. Ian Rodgers of St. Joseph's Hospital understands Dion's frustration and that of many other MS patients across the country. That's why he and his team of over 13 doctors is currently conducting a study into the CCSVI theory. One of only a few North American hospitals at the forefront of this work, Dr. Rodgers says the hesitation shown by the Canadian medical community is necessary when dealing with something this significant.
There have been too many times where in Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease, in MS as well, there have been false hopes that people have thought this is the answer, they go and have something done, and it turns out to be completely ineffective. Is this just another of those events? So there's a kind of natural skepticism, and what has happened here is that there is a request for evidence, and that's precisely why we're doing our study.
But for the Oxford family, they say they can no longer wait for the Canadian medical community to get on board with the liberation procedure. So with the help of friends, they were able to raise the $16,000 it would take for Dion to have the surgery done in Costa Rica. After 13 years, they both admit it hasn't been easy living with this disease, and they are hopeful to be rid of at least some of the symptoms.
It's really hard to watch Dion not be able to do things that he once could.
And that he loved to do.
That he loved to do. We have one child, and that's because of MS. And so she's an amazing gift, but we would have had a bigger family. So that's hard.
But again, it's brought us some new things to the relationship that most people wouldn't have. So it's been give and take. There have been things taken from us. I have lost things. We have lost things. And it is our disease. It really isn't just mine. So I deal with guilt a lot with this thing. I get so guilty when I can't wash the dishes. I do. If I can't sort of take care of Kate, or if I can't take her to the park and play tag and she's wonders why I won't, I feel nothing but guilt. And so just sort of dealing with all of those little tangential, not little things, but tangential things to the illness that we didn't anticipate, we couldn't have planned for, we couldn't have prepared ourselves for. It's been quite a ride.
And as they get ready for the next leg of their journey, only a week away, both know there are risks.
So what if it doesn't work? Are you prepared for that?
I'm scared. I'm scared about how Dion will deal or not deal with that reality. As much as I'm being cautious about this, it's easy to imagine all kinds of wonderful things and how life could be different. And so I want that. And I guess we'll be mourning or grieving this if it doesn't work.
Are you ever afraid?
Yeah, I've been afraid with MS. I have a daughter, a 7-year-old daughter, and I think my biggest fears have been, what happens? What happens if I can't? What happens if I become completely dependent on people? What happens if I can't care for her? What happens if I die and she doesn't have a dad? So that's been the most recent fears that I've had.
Both say dealing with this disease has also allowed them to grow closer in their personal faith journey. For Erinn, it has caused her to depend on God so much more than she ever had to before.
Well, I feel very consistently aware of being held by God. I think God has given me a huge measure of strength. I know that any strength that I have is from Him, because I certainly don't feel strong on my own.
And for Dion, he admits it's the lessons that God continues to teach him through his illness that have been invaluable and have changed his life for the better.
Yeah, my faith, again, it's strengthened. It has strengthened. I've asked many questions of God. I've wondered. I've had the pity parties like anybody would, I suppose. But at the end of the day, you ask the questions why, but lately it's just been why not. Like, I work with very broken people all the time, people who are homeless. And I've always asked the question, why did this happen to him and not to me? Like, why did he get abused as when he was 3 years old and not me? And so I think in this case, I've been dealt some bad cards. And so that, again, gives me something more in common with the friends I've made on the streets. Like, we've been dealt some bad cards. Let's learn how to deal with those cards, and let's learn how to walk together in community with the strength that only God can give us, and the love and the faith that only God can give us.
And so as Dion and his family prepare for this next step in their walk with MS, they say it will be their faith and their connection to each other that will help them get through this, no matter what the outcome. In Toronto, Ontario, Magdalene John, 100 Huntley Street.